All right, welcome everyone. Chris Petrie here. Thanks so much for coming by, joining along here. We're going to do a wonderful landscape painting with a cabin and a beautiful stone bridge, mountains, trees, pine trees, a creek, rocks. It's going to be so much fun. You're going to learn how to paint a lot of interesting things, or you're going to be painting these type of things. If you've been a landscape painter for a while, you'll have a lot of fun. You'll be used to painting all the different subject matter we have in this painting. But if you're brand new or you're just starting out, you're going to just have a great time kind of going over for the first time, maybe, let's say, doing a lot of these fun type of landscape compositional subjects. So let's get started here. You just can kind of see the real simple. We'll cover everything from A to Z. We're going to cover the layout. We're working from this photograph here, so you'll see that in the photograph you have a bridge going across the center. We made sure that we placed our bridge in our pencil drawing right along the center of the painting, just like the photograph. We got in our angles correctly. We did a little bit of erasing and adjusting to get our roof angles correct for our cabin. And then the rest was kind of, we made sure the mountains were just above the cabin and the trees, which you can see they match the photograph. So we're going to show you all the things, all the steps you need to put this all together and do this in a compositional style. And we're not here to be kind of really creating like a museum style painting where everything is absolutely perfect. We're just going to try to get the nuts and bolts of everything completed. You know, the grittiness of it, just the fun of it, pretending we're sitting here in this scene, painting it maybe together in lawn chairs and just like having a fun time out in the outdoors and taking in all of the great scenery and the fun of it all. So let's get started, I'll be right back. We'll start out with the pencil sketch. All right, so now we're just going to talk about how we set everything up here, how we got our drawing completed, our reference photo, everything like this, to get ourselves in a good place to start out the watercolor painting. So the first thing I did was I did notice that I really enjoyed seeing this photograph. I found this out and about, so I took a picture of the scene from a photograph that was displayed on a wall. And then I knew this would be a great watercolor painting, something really fun, enjoyable, kind of like a beautiful outdoor scene, landscape scene, a beautiful stone bridge, a cabin. Looks kind of like a museum, like a park setting. There might be like one of those little huts with the signs, the street signs, and then also like maybe a little informational glass case with all the information of the area and what's here. So that's what it kind of reminded me of, that good feeling of like just being out trekking around and sightseeing and things like this. So that's really fun, going out into the outdoors and seeing nature and all these great things. So the landscapes are fun that way. Really, you can get into the mindset of being out there and really enjoying the outdoors, the fresh air, the sunlight, the breezes, the beautiful sounds of the nature and birds and the flowing creeks and stuff. So this just brings all that to life as we look at this scene here in the photograph. And what I did is the first thing I did was I just wanted to see if I could place my features correctly within the rectangle here. So the first thing I do is I set up my rectangle with a pencil line going all the way around. And then basically what I'm doing is I'm actually creating the same border that I see here on my phone. So you can use an iPad, a home computer, an iPhone, a photograph, a magazine, a book, whatever you want to use for your subject matter. It kind of works the same way. You get yourself a good border, and then you work within your borders and you kind of look to see where things are in relation to your border. So here I noticed that the top of the bridge is approximately halfway down the photograph. So I went halfway down, a little more than halfway possibly, a little bit extra, and that's the top of my bridge. And then I started the soft radius going across here of the bridge, a soft radius. And then here, once I got that top soft radius across, I came in here and did the archway of the bridge underneath here where the creek runs through. And then once I got that's a little more of actually a true arch, an eyebrow arch maybe, or yeah, it's got a good circular shape to it. A little more than the top of the bridge, which is very slight of a radius. and this is much of a tighter radius here. So once we got that in, then I got my distant dark shapes under here, which are the shadows of the embankment of the creek back here. And then over here, you'll notice there's that beautiful grass that has sunlight on it. So that's kind of like a grassy field in front of the cabin over here to the left. So we can have a nice sunlit field here and then some dark shadows under the bridge here, like that. And then there's the water and the creek here in the front. And then I made sure I added some boulders and rocks, some details of that here and on both sides, as we see here. And then I put some indications of some grasses and things over here on both sides of the embankments here along the creek. And then over here on this side, the same thing. We're going to need we'll need some grasses and bushes and weeds and things like that. So we're going to have those in there. And I guess the key is, like, I thought to myself, I don't want to try to get caught up in too many details with this, because there's a lot of information. You can kind of see all the rocks, all the grasses and weeds and trees and shadows, and there's so much detail in a photograph like this. Our best bet is to just get the main idea of the overall composition of what's here, and then we lightly sketch it and do our pencil drawing with not a lot of detail. And then once we get in and start painting, we'll realize that we can get enough detail with our painting so that we can kind of tell the story of what's here and the beauty of this scene without painting every single weed and blade of grass and every single stone, so, something like that. Like, we're just going to try to make a more relaxed looking painting from this and not get into so much detail. Now, you could paint a lot of detail too. You could make it a large painting. So you could, this is maybe like an 8 by 12 or something, like a 7 by 10, I think. But, you could get a super large sheet of watercolor paper and get in more details if you want to, because some people like to paint a lot of details, and that's fine too. So you kind of approach it. You're the artist. You approach it the way you want to and the way you want to paint it. My style is more kind of like get some details in and also leave some loose suggestive things throughout the painting that kind of leave the viewer to kind of figure out what it is, or, kind of contemplate different things throughout the painting where they're filling things in with their own mind and so forth. But realism and really doing a lot of details is just as beautiful too. So you're the artist. You're going to do it the way you want to paint it. But I'm just kind of sharing with you how I do my my compositions and my paintings as far as how I approach it. So once I got the bridge and the creek and the stones and some of these grasses and things, then I just worked on the trees behind the cabin here and alongside the cabin over here. And we've got a pine tree in here. We just did a quick couple lines to get ourselves in the thought of pine trees. More branches are more level, like this, like that. And then these trees here are more like maple trees or birch trees and so forth. So they're more kind of like mushrooming out like this, upwards and out like this. And the pine trees are more like this from brushstroke, as far as brushstrokes go. And then, again, we said we wanted to, but we got the mountains in behind here too, the mountain range. And then we said we wanted to add a little bit over here. You'll see some lighter mountains. So we wanted to add a little bit of some lighter mountains in the distance here, maybe more cooler, a little more purple, a little more blue in those mountain ranges back here. And that'll give us some feeling of distance, like there's distant mountains behind this main mountain range that's right here, closest to us where the cabin is. Right behind the cabin, there's that mountain range right there. So that's something we can think about. And I'll try to do this kiosk here. So I think I see a kiosk here. And then there's a street, some street signs maybe. Like that. And that's it. I think we're good. Our sketches, pencil drawing has plenty there to give us lots of information to paint with. And I think we're good. All right, so let's grab our paints here. So what I'll do now is we'll spritz our paints a little bit here. A little bit of fresh water in a spritzer bottle just to kind of spritz our paints a little bit. And I'll probably use just a couple brushes or so. I think I'm going to use, definitely going to use the Da Vinci number 5 travel brush that comes with this set, the Schmincke set. And then I have other brushes too here. I might use, I also usually, I have my Charles Reed series travel brushes. So I usually have those on hand and a few others. But these look pretty good size-wise. And maybe for the sky we have a larger wash. We might use a larger brush there. But I'm basically just using round brushes. That's all I'm going to use, I think, for this painting. Okay, so we have some round brushes. We have our paints ready. You can just as easily use a beginner's palette. I also suggest that if you're beginning out, if you're beginning in watercolors, if you're starting out in watercolors, and if it's your first time here, welcome. Welcome. It's great to have you here. I know some of you might just be watching and saying, wow, this looks fun, drawing and all these different things and the watercolor painting. So if you're just here for the first time, maybe you're going to start painting. I always suggest if you start painting, the first watercolor paints you would buy are the Prang Oval 16 set. And these are more simple to use. You just open it up, you spritz this with a little bit of water, and you're ready to paint. And then you can just close it up, and then you can go a week, a month, 2 days, 3 months, whatever it is. The next time you just open it up, spritz it, and your paints are ready to go again, and you can paint. This type of paint that I'm using, it's tube paint, which is kind of like in the tubes like this. You got to squeeze it out into your palette. It's a little more time consuming. It's also, you have to kind of keep this cool and maybe put it in a plastic bag so the paints don't dry out. So if you're just starting out, your first couple years, your first year or two, you could certainly use, like again, the Prang Oval 16 set if you're just starting. And I also have many videos called Extreme Beginners videos. Extreme Beginners, you just type in Extreme Beginners watercolor or my name, Chris Petrie, Extreme Beginners. You'll see I have like 100 or more Extreme Beginner videos where I'm using this palette exclusively, and I'm kind of creating my paintings with this palette. And that's really a big help, because I know when I first started watercolor, all of this stuff was too much information for me, and it was almost like I almost felt like it was such a burden just to get a start and do a painting or work on paintings. You know, I had to go find everything. You know, my palette was over there, the brushes were in the other room, this was over there. Then once I get it out, these are all dry. This palette solves the problem. You can just open it up, spritz it with a little bit of spritzer bottle water. You're ready to paint. So that's just a suggestion I have always if you're just starting out, or if you're just, starting out 6 months or a year or so, you can use this palette. You'll have plenty of success painting with this palette. Okay, so let me take a quick break. I apologize if I know some of you might sometimes want to see the drawing as I do the drawing, but I felt like we could save some time here. It's nothing that really, we did want to do a little bit of more, I wanted to try a little more drawing here. So these are some more stones that are on the bridge. And of course you can get creative and do your own stone shapes. But I tend to go with what I'm looking at there. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to at least finish my stone arch here. Like that. Basically, I'm just drawing like basically squares and rectangles, mostly rectangles. Irregular too, let me say that. Irregular, you don't have to fuss with these stones too much. They're stones. They're actual natural rocks that they use from around the area that they were finding here. They probably dug up all the fields and were farming, and they dug up all the rocks, and then they used all these stones and boulders and rocks to build the bridges and the fields and the different things that they have. They have the borders of the fields and things. They all, when it was back in the turn of the century, they used the natural things that they would find to build everything in the actual earth. So this is just more. I will do some more light pencil. I'm doing like more boulders with this type of area here, which is the main portion of the bridge, like that. And then I might leave some areas with just open space. If we draw and paint every single stone, it might look a little bit overworked. So that's why I try to just do a couple here and there, maybe skip some areas. So I'll leave some areas open where there's not, there's no stones. Like I can, like this here. Okay, so there we have some stonework we've put in now. This was just basically kind of round shapes, irregular round shapes. You can just make them any old shape you want to. And that's it. And then we'll come back and we'll start painting. And we're going to do this very loosely. And you're going to see how in the next half an hour, we'll just get this really nice composition going with minimal amounts of effort, really. We're just going to kind of really loosely get it in and enjoy it, have fun doing it. And we're not really, again, like we're not going to set out here to create this like masterpiece of a painting or anything like that. We're just here having fun. We're pretending we're out in the outdoors, maybe pretend we're sitting in a chair with an easel or our sketchbook in our lap, and we're painting this scene as we're out there in the beautiful landscape here. And all the great artists over time used to go out and they would do paintings outdoors, and they would bring sketchbooks with them and sometimes easels and some elaborate things too. But a lot of times they went out and they just got information and had fun kind of capturing what they were seeing with their paints and their drawings and their sketches. Then they would go back to the studio and do more of like a finished painting and do like a final painting. So most of the outdoor work that was done is more or less like information gathering, colors, what color were the trees and the rocks and the stones, what was the sunlight like. We can here certainly take a look at this scene and say that the sunlight is over here, kind of on this side coming across this way. So we'll put our light insignia up here. Always good to have that. You put a small spotlight insignia in your border around your painting. Wherever the light's coming from, you put a little bit of an insignia with a light. And this way you kind of know, all right, the light's coming from here across this way. And that will help us to get the proper light and shadow in certain areas of our painting as we go. All right, I'm excited. We're going to paint in just a second. All right, get ready. Grab your paints, brushes, and a water container, and we're going to get ready and paint. In just a second, I'm just going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. All right, so now we're going to pick up and grab our brushes and our paints, and we'll start mixing some washes for the painting here. This is the time if you think you may have, or if you think you need to adjust any of your architecture or anything that you've drawn so far, you can do it now. I'm going to erase this a little bit. I feel like I don't have the angles exactly correct here, so I'm going to try to see if I can get this a little more closer to what I'm seeing in the photograph. I think that looks a little better. that angle on the roof. These are usually a little difficult sometimes, like angles on roofs and things, if they're not exactly straight, like if it's not like a frontal where you're looking exactly in the front of a roof like this. Sometimes the angles get a little bit challenging, so I try to always take my time a little bit and re-look at things like that, so it looks a little better this way. I changed the angle, as you can see from here, I changed the angle a little bit lower over this way, so I think that does look a little bit better like that. You can always take your pencil like this too and kind of hold it there like this, and then just kind of transfer the pencil over like this. And that tends to be, that's better. I can kind of just take the pencil, hold it on the angle of the photograph, and then just try to keep it still and not move it at all, and drop it down like that. And then that tends to work sometimes. That can work pretty good. I didn't see too many. I'll put a little tree in front of the cabin here. Maybe I don't exactly see that same tree, but I do see some things that look like some limbs. So I'll try to do that. A little bit of a tree in front of the cabin, and that's fine. I think everything else looks good. Now the thing is with this type of painting, I like to paint this painting a la prima. Sometimes too I like to just erase a few lines. Maybe just take a couple of swipes with my eraser across the painting here and there, just a little bit, like that. I'll tend to make these, this is almost like a black and white painting, or a sepia tone painting. So the cabin looks like it's pretty much very dark. Brown. I'll put some French ultramarine blue and burnt umber, and that'll be my dark for the cabin. And my goal right now is to get the darks in the painting completed first. So if I can get the darks completed first, then I can gauge how much lighter I have to make everything else as I finish the painting. So if I go with my darker darks first, I know my darks, right? I can see the darks here in this painting. They're really evident. The front of the cabin is really dark. This tree over here is very dark. There's some darks in this tree over here and over on this side of the tree. Very, very dark color and tonal value, let's say. Underneath the bridge here where these shadows are in the creek, very dark. You know, you could say it's almost like black, or, you know, just super dark. More darks over here around the rocks and things. So if I get all of those darks in first, then everything else, I just lighten up all the other washes from that darkest dark that I'm seeing on my paper. It's much easier, I think. Anyway, that's how I learned, and it really does seem to work really well for me. So I will get the darks in first, and that's what we're going to do. Here we go. So I just take my brush, and I have the number 5 Schmincke travel brush that comes with this actual set. And I'll put some of this here where the tree is. And in this photograph, I don't see any windows or doors. I'm sure there's windows and doors, but I really don't see them at all. They're not visible. The shadow is so dark over here on this side of the cabin, you don't even see it. So if you don't see any windows and doors, don't put them in, or you could put them in if you want. You have the artist's liberty to add things or delete things as you see fit in your paintings. So I find that trying to add things into paintings is more difficult. Deleting things from paintings is kind of more simple. If you just remove something from a painting, like if you're looking at something in a photograph and you say, I don't want to put that tree in or that rock or that specific something or other, it might be a little bit easier, you know. If you add something in, then it's a little bit more challenging because you don't know if there's any shadows or anything like that, or that might be a little difficult and challenging to do. So, but you do always have that liberty as an artist. You can change things around as you want to. Okay. I will take a little bit of sap green here with a little bit of water, like that, and then splash a little bit of green right there on that. I try to get it a little bit of green there where the cabin is. And if you splash and it goes a little bit over something else, don't worry about it. You can lift it up real easy. like that, with a little bit of tissue or paper towel. And you always remember, when you're working in watercolor, especially painting like this, a la prima, which is painting everything at one time, you can have your tissue on hand, or you can use a sponge. And then when you rinse off your brush, you just tap a little bit of water off your brush. So this way you don't flood out your palette with too much water. That's the key. You want to keep your paints looking like this. So you'll notice that my paints and my palette don't look like this. Well, that water, that's not really... Sometimes you'll use a wash like this with all that water, but most times I don't really use that amount of water. Only rarely do I use this much water. Like, you can use this for splashing. It really works good for splashing, a lot of water, but not so much for doing your washes. Like, if I want to get the darks first, which we're doing right now, we need almost like straight paint and just a damp brush. So that's what I do. I rinse off the brush, dry off a little bit of the water on paper towel or sponge or tissue, and this way you can go in and get your darks, which is almost straight paint with just a tiny bit of water. And then you can just continue on with your darks, and you'll get all your darks just the way you need them, like this. There might be a little bit of light over here on this wall for the sunlight coming this way. So you can always take a paper towel or tissue and lighten up a little bit on that. Like that there. Then over here it's darker. It's in shadow, this side of the cabin. A little darker under here, like that. All right, look at that, how good we're coming along here. We got our darks in for our cabin area. That's perfect. Now, we're going to actually, since we're working over here, I'm going to grab a little bit of a larger brush here. This is a number 6, a Skoda travel brush, and these are great travel brushes. You break them apart and you put them together like this, and there's a hole in the top so the air dries. So when you're done painting outdoors, if you're going anywhere to paint, whether you're on vacation, weekend getaways, you're going outdoors maybe to a park nearby your place where you live, you're going into your backyard even, and you have a little bag set up with some travel brushes, you just leave these in your bag or your backpack or your purse or your pocket. Once you're done painting, you just put it in, close it up, throw it in your pocket, throw it in a bag, duffel bag, whatever, and they dry naturally. So these are great. And then the next time you're ready to paint, a week or two or a month from now, open it up, snap it together, and you got your brush ready to go. So these are always, I have a bag dedicated for outdoor painting or vacations or weekend getaways, a leather bag, which has got all this gear in there, brushes, travel brushes just like this. I have this actual set here in a bag with a palette smaller than this, paper, a sketchbook, and some other things, and I'm all ready to go. I didn't never have to worry about spending an hour or two roaming around the house looking for my art supplies. It's all in one bag, ready to go. So whenever I travel or anything like that, it's ready to go. And we're going to get some sap green now, mixed with that brown. And we're just going to get a little bit of some darks there, the trees. That we need more darks. Here, more French ultramarine blue, burnt umber, maybe a little bit of burnt sienna, sap green. And then we have the darks up here too, like that. Okay, and that's perfect. You just get some of those darks just like we're looking at over here. Sometimes I do finger painting. I just dab a little bit on the paper. Then I'll get a little bit of extra water there. And splash a little bit more extra water, just a little bit here. Like that. I splash on there and then do a little bit of dabbing Along the roof, I'd use my brush like that. Then a little bit of green like this. This is where I do add a little bit more water to get some more tree shapes above here. Like that. A little more green, maybe a little bit of viridian green. Like that. And that is fine. Then we work right over here. We have more darks over here, right next to the cabin on the right side over here. And again. A couple more splashes like this, a couple of finger taps. Some green. I try to mix my paints around the painting. So my greens and my darker browns and blue. Now, perfect time to take some paper towel and just lift up all the water we have in here because we're going to need more straight paint now. French ultramarine blue, sap green. Makes a great kind of a dark green kind of mix for some pine trees. I'll dry off a little bit of the brush with some paper towel or tissue. And then I'll just do some of those strokes we were talking about before, those brush strokes where we're making them more level like this. A couple of and sometimes if I have like sometimes I'll use chopsticks and I'll whittle them down a little bit to make so I can sometimes I'll clean out some paints out of my palette, or sometimes I'll do some marks on my paintings like this. So you can do a little bit of scraping and get some marks with something like this. It works really good. You could get a couple more like this here. Sometimes you have to time it and let the paint dry a little more than I have here, but this does look pretty good. I'm getting some good marks here on the paper, like that. Just make some really good indications of, tree trunks, limbs, branches. All right, I won't fuss around too much. That's pretty good. Okay, again, we're going for the darks. Okay, this is dark over here. And that's that kiosk we were talking about. And then this was the street signs where we have those really interesting street signs and maybe things where points of interest on there. All right, so we're again focusing in on the darks. Now's a good time to take a quick break. I always mention this myself anyway. You're the artist, you'll figure out how much time you can work without starting to lose your kind of real good sharp focus on the tasks at hand as you're working. So I always mention it's usually around 15 or 20 minutes for myself. After 15 or 20 minutes, I might start to lose a little bit of my focus and concentration. So it's always a great time to take a break after 15 or 20 minutes. But again, some of you, I know artists that work an hour or two at one time and they don't have to take any breaks. They're fine with concentrating for an hour or more. So everyone's different. But my time is usually about 15 or 20 minutes. Okay, so you take the breaks as you need them. And we'll come right back and we'll continue painting. But I think our goal, again, is really getting the darks in first, and it's plenty to do. So we still have a lot more darks to get in, as you can see down here below. The archway on the creek area, we have lots of darks in there. We have some darks all in here where the rocks are. We have some over here on the embankments along the creek. We have some darker shadows over here. So we have plenty of darks to work on until we start working on the lighter washes. So let's not worry too much. We know that the darks are usually a lot of fun and a little bit easier, in my opinion. To start with, the darks usually are more fun, again, and easier because there's not a lot of like nuances to the darks. It's usually just really dark paint, and you just mix your darks as you feel you want to see them on your painting. Okay, all right, so we'll come right back and finish up the rest of the darks in the next 15 minutes or so. All right, so we're getting back started here. We're going to keep working on our darks here. So I think I see a few more over here. Some rocks over here. And there's a little bit of shadow there. And then I'll start working maybe left to right. I tend to work left to right since I'm right-handed. This way I can kind of work this way. And I don't lean into the paint as it's drying or wet, still damp or wet. So if I start over on the left and work this way, I'm better off. If you're left-handed, you maybe want to start over here on the painting on this side and work right to left. And then over here we got some darks. I'll mix up more dark here. French ultramarine blue, burnt umber, sap green. I'm working right in there. And again, sometimes you don't have to worry if everything is not perfectly exact the way you see it in the painting. Okay, then I'm going to come over here and work in these areas here. Right over in here, more darks. Okay, a little more water. Lots of darks in here. Okay, I would consider that the like the shoreline of the rocks, and the creek kind of comes through here, and then it goes over to this right side over this way. So I'm considering that there, that kind of line right there. And I'll let that dry and set up a little bit. And then once that dries up a little bit, then I'll start going in and doing more darks underneath it. But I want to get a little bit of that white. There's like a little bit of a white highlight that goes along the underside of this here. So I'll let that dry and set up a little bit. And that's that field. There's dark under the archway here. Burnt umber, French ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, a little bit of green. And we'll get that dark under there like that. Bit of a shadow under there, under the bottom of the arch like that. And then this is, we could add a little bit of that cadmium lemon yellow for some bright sunlight maybe. That's over here, coming down this way. A little bit of blue. Okay, this looks like it's dried quite a bit along this embankment along the creek. Now I'll go right in. Maybe I'll make this a little cooler, a little bit of a blue in there, so I'll put in some blue. It's quite dark though, so I'll try to, like that. I'll do a little bit of splashing. French ultramarine blue, a little bit of, so I'll use some blue and green, French ultramarine blue and Viridian. And this is where I do add that little bit of extra water for that kind of, extra water there, because this is water here and it's lighter, the wash. So I want to make sure I get that a little bit lighter there. I want to muddy the water up a little bit. Sometimes I do a little bit of the reflective kind of quality to it. You can pull some, with a tissue, you can kind of drag down a little bit of the paint and then go over it with like this. Like that. Splash a little more water on there. Watercolor's got a lot of attributes, and water is the most important one. Okay, a little more burnt umber, French ultramarine blue, sap green, Viridian. And I'll put this dark in over here. A little bit of water, extra water, splash it on there. So I'm going to do a little bit of weeds and things like a little bit of a bush and some weeds. Not too... Again, over here on this side, we keep it kind of mellow, not too much detail over here. Okay, now a little more sap green. I'll take my brush and kind of do some, hold the brush like that, and I do some like swirl, like circular. Keeps it kind of loose, fun. A little bit of yellow there. Okay, we're getting there. We are going to continue. Let's Viridian. And this is where I start to think about scaling back on too much paint, adding too many washes. Like, let's leave some white paper here. Why not? You can always go back in and add more things, but it's hard to remove anything you've created on the paper. So if you think of it as, if you want to hold back a little bit on how much your washes you're putting into this painting, that's fine. I'm going to hold back on how much paint I'm putting in here. I've already put in a lot of paint so far. So now I think what I'm going to do is take a quick break. I'm going to take a quick break and come back and continue to work, but I think I've got a lot of what I need here. I think I'm going to do a little more work to the stone. A little more work to the stone. There might be a little bit of wash on the roof here, like that. And a little more work to the stones, obviously. We're going to put some shadows on some of the stones. All right, but I think we are really getting there. Let's take a quick break. And then once we come back, we'll finish up. I think in the next 20 minutes, we'll have everything finished up, and we'll have a really good composition here of this wonderful scene. Okay, we'll be right back. All right, so we're going to start to finish up here. I think we have lots of great details so far with our washes. So I did fill up some sap green here. I was running out of sap green, so at the break I got some more sap green here, so we'll be in good shape with that. And I think what we'll do next is maybe I'll work on the bridge details. So you go back to my number. I'm going to go back to my number 5 Da Vinci travel brush here. And I'm going to start putting some shadowing on the stones. So up on top, there's like a stone coping that they used, like stone coping stones on the top of the bridge. And they were probably more like square, kind of like square stones. They might have cut them with chisels and things to make them square. So they kind of make like a nice capstone type of feel to it. So I'll make some more darks here. French ultramarine blue, burnt umber, little burnt sienna, sap green. And we can get some of those dark shadows underneath the stones that are at the top of the bridge. Now what happened was here, you'll notice you can always make some repairs to your watercolor paintings, and I'm going to do a video in the near future, of kind of making some repairs to your paintings when you need to. So here I noticed that I painted over the coping stones that are on the top of this bridge with some of that dark brown blue mixture of the cabin. So I will fix that with some white paint. So we'll go in at the end of this video and show you how you go about maybe doing a couple touch-ups here and there if you need to. But that is definitely required on this, I think, here. Because I can kind of see how that really, just a little bit though, but not much, but it's enough that it... Okay, so now I'll go in and just do random shadows of the stones where the light is going across the bridge face here along this bridge, and you'll see some shadows on the stones on the right hand side of the stones actually. So I'll put in a few of those. I'm not going to do every one, just do a few here and there to keep the effect accurate. So as long as I make an attempt to keep some accuracy to what we're seeing here, we're going to be in good shape. So I'll do some of the shadows on the right sides of the stones here and there. And I just randomly do it. Like so. Okay. That looks good. Then I'll make some stone colors. Very simple, lighter colors. And we use the same colors we used all along here. Greens, brown, green, blue. We're just going to take lighter washes of the same colors we've used throughout this painting. We'll pick up some of that green over here. Yellow. So you just want to get a representation of what you've already used in this painting. Here in these lighter washes. Okay, here we go. And we'll make some shapes of stone. And what I'll do is, you'll see, we're going to do some with our brush, and we're going to do some spattering and splashing with our brush to do some more textures of the bridge stone. So that's how you'll make some cool stone looking with some blue, some brown for some of the brown stones. Stones are generally multicolor. Most often they are. Okay. And I've kind of worked in all of these bits of stone here. That looks pretty good. Then what I'll do is take my brush. You can always, I will admit that splashing is sometimes difficult with watercolors, keeping it accurate and keeping it close to where you want to have it. So one thing you can do, if you ever consider this, is you could just put some paper, some printer paper, regular office paper, on top of your painting in areas you're going to be splashing, so that you don't get everything or splashes going where you don't want them to. So I'm going to do this. Splashing is it's basically just you use a little more water. It won't work with just kind of like very, very, you need a little bit of water in your paint to get the splashing to work. And then you grab it, you mix it, get it on your brush. And then as you're kind of like swinging your brush down toward the paper, you tap on the brush at the same time, like that. And you just stop short and tap, like that. Then you can take a little bit like this and dab around a little bit. And that gets you some really nice stone effects. And then you can come over here and do the same thing. Some blue and some of that brown. You can use a little bit of that larger brush like we have here, the number 6 travel brush, Charles Reed travel brush. You could do this here. And if you add a little more water, you can get bigger splashes. Then you can go in and kind of dab them around. You can dab a little bit, do some finger painting. And if we do that, that really looks good. And then we can take some blue, cerulean blue, and do maybe a little shadowing under here. Maybe underneath here. That gives us a little bit of a feel of shadow underneath that coping stone that's on the... And then you could add a little bit of brown. Like that. And that's pretty good. And I'll dab in some brown here and there, maybe some blue. Try to just make sure I have plenty of color mixtures going. Like that. We could make a little bit of a darker shadow under here too, like so. Embellish this archway a little bit more by adding a little bit of a medium tone to the underside of the shadow. So we put that darker shadow under there before, but we add a little bit more of this shadow, and that kind of looks pretty good. And I think that's fine. I think that really looks good. I think we're all set there. Next thing we do is let's mix up some light wash for the mountains. And we're going to use the same colors we've been using all along. Only thing I would do differently is add a little blue. We want to make the mountains back here somewhat cooler. It kind of makes them feel cooler and sitting back a little bit in the painting. Like that. A little bit of brown in there too. And again, a larger brush is helpful here. Like you wouldn't want to probably paint the mountains with the number 5 travel brush. It would be kind of hard to keep the momentum going with the washes. So that's why I would definitely kind of stick with the larger brush for the larger washes here. Okay, and that's our kiosk right there. And then over here, we're going to make these even cooler yet. We're going to add a little bit of purple to it. Now, with the purple, we're going to need to add some, this is ultramarine violet, Winsor Newton ultramarine violet. You'd want to add in some ultramarine violet, a little bit here and there, before you add it into the mountains back here. This is a good discipline. If you all of a sudden say to yourself, I want to add some ultramarine violet or some purple color to my mountains back here to make them look like they're sitting back further, give us that more three-dimensional quality, then you just have to remember, all right, before I do that, if I'm going to add purple, take the purple, put it on your palette, and then add it in here and there around your painting, just so you have it in there. Because if you don't put it everywhere else in your painting, it's going to really look awkward in the painting. It's enough that it would actually, someone would look at the painting probably, that's not even an artist, but just looking at it would probably say there's something they can't figure out why, but it's just something doesn't look right. And that's something that wouldn't, like, actually, color harmony is very important with any painting. You always want to harmonize all your colors together in your paintings. So watercolor especially, because you're mixing so much washes and you're using so many colors usually. Watercolor artists use a lot of colors. We want to do that. Definitely use a lot of colors and maximize that part of watercolor. But the thing is, we have to make sure we put that purple in everywhere. And that's why I'm doing that. I'm just going to make sure I get some in the water over here. Not overboard, just a little bit here and there. You can see it's very light what I'm putting in. If you put too much, you can always lift it up a little bit with a tissue. But now we have purple throughout the painting. And now we can go in and just know that we'll be okay over here with the purple. A little bit of blue and purple. And a little bit of the mixture of brown and a little bit of green. But it should be light. It's going to be lighter than this. And then now we can just lift up a little bit of that there. Blue and purple. little bit of green. A little bit of green there, just to lighten it up. And back here, the purple. You can even add in a little bit of pencil line if you want to, because that can sometimes look awkward without you having a pencil line there. So there we go. So hopefully that does look pretty good. Hopefully that gives us that feel of distance. We have some nice distance there. All right, and I won't get too much involved too much more with that. I want to just leave it as it is. And of course, now that we're at the final part of our painting, I'm going to add a little bit of water up here in the sky. I'm going to keep the sky real simple. So the way I keep a simple sky is add a little bit of fresh, clean water to the very, very top of the sky, right up here along the pencil line where the border is that I created. So let's do that. Let's get some fresh, clean water up there. Get the paper damp. Take a little bit more fresh, clean water, and then just bring it a little bit more down, and that's it. And then we can do another, we'll make sure we keep a palette clean, like this. And we're going to get a nice cerulean blue wash on there with a little bit of viridian green and a little bit of French ultramarine blue. Now what we do is we make the sky darker at the top, and then it gets lighter as it goes on the bottom. So I just go across here like this, just like this here and there, like that. Then we move into more of the cerulean blue and green, viridian green. I'm just going to make the sky parallel strokes like this, right across the sky like this. And then once you have 2/3 of the sky coming down like this, that is fine. And then you just kind of get that last bit. You can always take a touch of orange over here. A touch of orange, just a very little bit like that, and add it to the bottom, right where it meets the land, where it meets the mountaintops. You add a little bit of very, very little tiny bit of orange, and that really looks good. And you just blend it nice and easy. I wouldn't go near that tree too much there, that pine tree. I would leave that. And that is it. That's our painting. Complete. A nice composition, landscape composition. We could do this together out in a scene just like this, setting up with our lawn chairs and having a fun time and creating something like this in a couple hours or so. Having lots of fun, enjoying the sun, the outdoors, the scenes, the views, everything, the whole experience. So glad you came by to do this painting with me. We had so much fun here, and I hope you'll ask any questions you might have in the comment section below. And also, too, always remember at the end of your painting, what we'll do is we'll just take a little bit of that yellow ochre and put it in the top of the paint of our white, titanium white paint. I use titanium white paint to make touch-ups or add highlights. You could add like sunlight highlights. And then I'll go back to my number 5 brush here. Our number 5 travel brush here. And what we'll do is I'm going to try to make those stones on the bridge like that. That looks good. I got that. Then I'm going to do the roof a little better here for our kiosk. Maybe a dot of light on top of the kiosk or on top of the signs, the street signs. And maybe we can touch up the shadow underneath the kiosk. I think I went a little bit too heavy with the shadow under there. So I can just clean that up a little bit like that. And that is it. All right. So we're going to get back together very, very soon. I'm glad you joined along. Again, we create paintings every week here on my channel. We do everything watercolor. We create landscapes like this with beautiful scenes of mountains and cabins and all this great outdoor stuff. We do boats, seascapes. We do beach scenes with ocean scenes, and we do figures and portraits occasionally, just a little bit. We do a lot of flower paintings, still life paintings with vases of flowers and fruits and cups and all kinds of interesting things like that. So stick here on my channel. You'll learn a lot. You'll also be practicing a lot because we do lots of compositions like this. So we're not doing so much like larger finished paintings. We're doing smaller compositions where we work on our skills and all of the like ingredients that you need to put everything together so that when you want to put together a larger painting, it's a lot easier because you kind of have practiced all the more fundamental things in watercolor first. All right, so let's meet up again very, very soon. Again, happy painting, everyone. We'll talk to you in just a few days or weeks. Okay, bye-bye.